Can everybody see?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. All right, so this is going to be the introduction to mobile development with Flutter. In this call are also Henry Marks and Jason Telenoff, who've been studying Flutter for a couple months, and they're going to be able to help you. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat, and they'll be there to answer them. So a bit about me. I've been coding with Flutter for about 2 years, and I've been on a couple cool projects with it. And I think it's going to be, I think it's the direction mobile development's heading. That's Jason. So what is Flutter? Flutter is a cross-platform mobile app framework by Google. Why does it matter? This framework is really young, and yet it's already being adopted by all these companies. And what's really important about how young this is it's so young that I've been able to get a job at one of these companies, and I'm a sophomore in high school. So if you guys do it, you'll be able to get this too. So let's get started. Today we're going to cover creating a Flutter app. Oh, sorry, this is the old workshop, so we're just going to cut this here. But we're just going to go over a bit of Dart. So step 1, variables. Can everybody here in the chat comment if they have any previous coding experience? Just any of it. Give me the languages you've learned, or if you don't have any. Java and JavaScript, Dart, I like it. Java. Nice. Definitely, I'll post this that. There's also going to be a whole Medium article about how all this works. So for those of you who are Python guys, I'm going to be honest. When I code Python, it messes up my Dart. And when I code Dart, it messes up my Python. They are completely different languages, and it helps to think of them separately. Step 1 is going to be variables. You define a variable in Dart by its type, then naming it, and then setting it equal to something. And these are all pretty simple. My name is Ben. It's equal to a string with the quotes. My age is 16. It's an int or a number. A Boolean can either be true or false. And I'm going pretty crazy in quarantine. And this is a list of my hobbies. And it's a list of strings. And you can see we define it with brackets. Next, functions. Functions in Dart are very, very different than a lot of other languages. If you're in JavaScript, this might look a bit foreign. You define a function by the type that it's returning. So these are the same as the variables, except now I can put them within functions. Want to double check, is everybody following right now? And just basic functions. So the applications of functions start when you start making them dynamic. So this is the function multiply by 2. And what it does is it takes in an int in the parentheses, and that's the number that's multiplying, and it returns that number times 2. And if I wanted to use this, I could create a variable called multiplied number and make it equal to multiplied by 2. Now we're going to get a bit more fun with functions. And this is going to be how you would combine strings and functions. So this one takes 2 variables. It takes a string first name and a string last name. And it puts them together by using the $sign within a string. And see, it's $sign. That means it's putting the variable first name in, $sign, and it's putting the variable last name in. And when it's combining these, it's combined first and last name. It's taking Ben and Swirlo and putting them into that one string. Going a bit further in this, you can make them a bit more advanced if you want to do a movie rating system. And finally, I promise you this is the most advanced they're going to get during this tutorial, is returning UI with functions. So a widget is the basis of UI in Flutter, which is the mobile development framework we're going to be using. So this is going to take in advanced props, but we're just going to cover the basis of what it does. This is a Boolean is raised. So what it's asking here is if it's raised, it's going to return a raised button. And if not, it's going to return a flat button. Now, if you look in here, there's actually brackets before these. and they're inside the brackets. And what that does is while the Boolean value just goes in order, and as these you can see here with movie, as these you can see are just in order, these are unordered. You just put their name before them, and then you can put the value after that. So is everybody okay-ish on the language? It is very Java-esque. I actually, to Given, how I've described Dart to people is it's Java, but it's with less strict syntax. In Java, you have to define a list of strings to do that. In this, you just define a list. So now I'm going to send the link to the Medium article. This article is going to cover everything that we are covering in this tutorial, in this workshop. So yeah. So this workshop assumes that you have installed Flutter, because I wrote this before this new program called FlutLab came out. But if you didn't install Flutter before now, you can just go to flutlab.io, and it's going to set you up with a sandbox. And it's going to allow you to code Flutter in your browser. You can build your simple app just by clicking Build Project. And there you go. It takes a minute. Now, how many of you guys saw the messages before and downloaded Flutter? Can I get a message if you did? To Saeed, can you tell me a bit more about your question?
Yeah, basically, can you just combine two strings using the plus sign instead of using the regular expression?
Yes. The regular expression has the advantage of it just makes things shorter in the long run. So if you're trying to combine names and things into strings, it just looks a bit nicer when you're trying to put together a big app. But yes, plus signs do work. We are only going to cover Flutter. We're just going to be creating a simple mobile app with it. So to everyone who installed Flutter, there are a few steps to creating your app that the people using FlutLab are just going to have done for them. You're going to run the command flutter create my app. And this takes a minute, but afterwards, you're going to have a full Flutter project. Sorry. So now it has created the Flutter project. And to run it, I run the command cd myapp, and then I run it with Flutter run. This is also going to take a minute, so I'm going to start in FlutLab. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over what a widget is. Everything that is user interface in Flutter is a widget. If you have a top bar, that's a widget. If you have a center, that's a widget. If you do a circular progress indicator, where it's the spinny thing on iOS, that's a widget. It's all widgets. So that's the widget. So if we want to create a widget, the first thing I'm going to do in here is I'm going to go and I'm going to, the first step I'm going to do, I'm going to move this over. And in the lib folder, I'm going to create a new file. And I'm going to name it my homepage.dart. Now, in here, I need to import material. And that's just the basic Flutter package for creating apps. Next, I need to create a stateless widget. So if I want to, I can try to create it by hand, but they're all just going to look exactly like this. So you can go ahead and copy the code that's on the medium right now and just paste it into here. Rather than having you write out this code, I'd say it's actually better to copy and paste it, because even when I'm creating stateless widgets, I actually just use my IDE to do it because it takes too long to write them. So now we've defined a homepage file and a main file. And this is just returning an empty container, which has nothing in it. But currently, this is actually not returning our homepage. It's returning the default homepage that came with the app. So we got to fix that by first importing Flutter. Importing our homepage. And then setting the home of our app to be homepage. That's the thing we just built. When it's rebuilding now, it's just gonna, I guess it's, This is weird. I'm sorry. I haven't had this problem when I tested this earlier. Sorry, this is very embarrassing. Oh. Did anyone here install Flutter on their computer? Yay, nay? Guess I'm going to have to register to rebuild. I'm sorry about that. I did not know that was coming. And now I can rebuild, and you're going to see that it turns out completely blank. To speed this process up, I think I'm just going to do it from my computer. Here's my simulator with the base. If I create a new file, homepage.dart, in here, I'm going to import package flutter/material.dart. And then I'm going to create a new stateless widget and call it homepage. That's the first step. Then again, I'm going to import homepage.dart. And then I'm going to replace my homepage, which is the default, with the homepage we created. Save it. And now when I reload, it's going to be pure black. Has anybody gotten here yet? Where is everybody stuck? Where is everybody right now? All right. See, Saeed's got here. That's good. Jason, can you help Nitu install? And Nitu, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. So now when it reloads, it should turn out just like this, perfectly bland, because there's nothing there. Flutter is the exact same purpose of React Native. However, it does its job very differently, as Flutter renders from its own native Dart code that compiles down, and it has its own, it interfaces more closely with the native platforms, which makes it run faster and a bit cleaner. So the next phase to building this, we're going to go ahead and we are going to create a scaffold. A scaffold is the basic material design piece. And it is what all material pages are based off of. Now, when I create a scaffold, if I put nothing within it and I save, it's just going to turn white. And that's because, unlike a container which has nothing, a scaffold by default comes with the background. Now, the first thing I want to put in this scaffold is going to be a header. And in Flutter, those are called app bars. So to create an app bar, I set the app bar of the scaffold object to an app bar widget. And that is going to create an empty bar at the top of the app. Within the app bar, I sort of want to put a text up there because there's nothing there. So I can put a title, set the title of the app bar to a text widget that says, "Hi, I'm a title." And when I save that and I hit the R for reload, it's going to show that it's a title. But we can do more than that with a scaffold. So the next thing I'm going to show is how to set the body, the big white space below it. And by doing that, we can put the body of the scaffold equal to, I'm going to start with just a raw text. I'm going to call it desserts. Oh, that's deserts. Oops. Now, this is pretty lame. You can't win a hackathon with just a top bar and a deserts on the upper left. So the next thing you can do with this is you can wrap it in a column. And what that did is that created a column, and the children are desserts. And still, it didn't change anything because there's nothing else in the column. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create a widget. This is a widget that's actually not in the original tutorial, but I think you guys are going to like it. It's called divider. If you put that below, it creates just a small gray divider. Now, below desserts, can everybody send some of their favorite desserts? Saeed, I want to get to you in sending the HTTP requests, but I want to do that at the end so I can help the people who are beginning just get an intro. So what are pumpkin pie? Love pumpkin pie. So if I wanted to put a text here, I could put text, and I can put a pumpkin pie in, text, ice cream, text, brownies, text, chocolate chip cookies. So there's a lot we can do with this. For one, I think the text desserts needs some space above it. So what I can do here is I can create a container, and I can set its height to, I don't know, 16. And if I reload that, you see it added that height of 16 container right at the top between them. See, these are the lines of how all the widgets are spaced, and there's the empty container right there. So the next thing I'm going to be covering is how to do rows within columns. So I want to give each of my desserts a rating. So I create a row, and I set the children equal to a list. And then I'm going to take my pumpkin pie, and I'm going to give a pumpkin pie a 10 out of 10. And I'm going to do another row. And I'm going to create ice cream. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. And I'm going to do the rest pretty quickly just to move on to the next thing. As you can see here, it did, sure, it created a row with first our first text and then our second, but they're right next to each other. And we don't really want that, you know, we want them spaced apart. I feel like that would look a bit better. So here's where we can get into alignment. Flutter does alignment in two ways, main axis and cross axis, and they're the same for rows and columns. And they're sort of opposites for rows and columns, actually. So the main axis of a row is horizontal. So I can set its main axis alignment to any of these. Right now, it defaults to start because it just starts them at the beginning. But if I want them to separate, I can set its alignment to space between. And now when I run that, it's going to bring that 10 out of 10 all the way over to the other side. So we could do this for all the others, but I'm sure some of the people who've attended a lot of workshops know what's coming next is these are all going to be about the same code. So what we can actually do here is we can create a function that'll create them for us. So how to do that is, first, I'm just going to go on line 45. Normally, you could create it within a widget, but we're just going to keep it simple. So the function is going to return a row because these are rows. So we define row, and then I'm going to call it dessert row. And it's going to take in a string for the dessert name and a string for the dessert rating. And it's going to return a row with the main axis alignment set to main axis alignment dot space between. And the children first text dessert name and second text dessert rating. Now I can use this function up here. Rather than typing that out, I can return dessert row, and I'm going to give it pumpkin pie. And this time, pumpkin pie is only getting a 9 out of 10. So you can see the difference. And I can do that with all of these, and it'll save me a lot of code. So we went from typing out rows a bunch of times to just having to type in dessert row and it giving us what we want. So now this is where I normally have it diverge a bit. We can continue on this tutorial and go through a few more widgets, cover everything else, cover text styling and that stuff. We can also shift and cover connecting Firebase to this app. And we can also cover something completely different if you guys are interested. If anybody's lost, we can go back. It's whatever works. All right, we're going to continue on this with just a bit more styling. So I still think the rows are pretty ugly. And the next thing I want to do is I want to add padding around the rows. And doing that in Flutter is actually surprisingly easy. You don't have to go into CSS or do anything like that. You just wrap the row in a padding widget. So you create a padding widget, and you set its child to a row. This causes an error because your function returns a row, but now it's returning a padding. So you'd have to change that to a padding widget. So a padding widget does have to have padding within it. That's a requirement. And padding is done with edge insets in Flutter. So you type edge insets, and I want it padding on all sides. So I'm going to do edge insets.all, and I'm going to give it a padding of 8. And now, rather than being against the wall, they're spaced out. Again, is there anything anybody would like to cover? Is everybody following okay? Yeah, there is. This is going to be a fun one. We're going to cover basic packages. So to launch links in Flutter, you need to add packages. And to find your package, you go to a site called pub.dev. Now, here, there's one of the most popular packages called URL Launcher. And that's how you make it launch a YouTube video. You first add this line to your dependencies. You copy the line from here. You go into your project, and it's either going to be for you guys in your pubspec.yaml down at the bottom, and you'd add it right below Cupertino icons on line 26, right here. Or for those of you guys who are coding it natively, again, in your pubspec.yaml, line 26, or looks like it's line 31 here. You save it. And this is one where the online one actually has an advantage, because for those of you who are installing it and you're running yours locally, you're going to have to restart your app to be able to use the package, because it just installed native code, which isn't really a part of the Flutter base. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to quit. And then I'm going to run the command flutter run. While we're at that, let's look at the docs for how you'd open a URL. So this defines a function that returns an app. Its body is a scaffold that returns a centered button. And when the button's pressed, it calls the function launch URL. And what launch URL does is it launches this URL that was set here. So this launches the URL. So you can launch a URL by just running the command launch URL. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. And there's a lot of random packages on here. In my project for this hackathon, I think so far I'm using 7 of them. So they're fun. They're just like NPM packages, and they are super easy to use. Yes, there is a way to have a video play in the app. Streaming video in the app is somewhat difficult. However, like a video that was stored within the app bundle is super easy. I'll show that after this. So again, I do not believe video playing comes out of the box. So let's look for the package video. I have not used video before. I have used video player. And how video player works is first we have to install it. And this one, because it's playing a video, it's going to be using the pure native code. So we have to add some stuff to both iOS and Android. And how this one's working is it is defining a video controller. And it's from the network. So this is where the video is coming from, this URL. And it's initializing it. And then it's using a thing called set state, which we'll cover later. Then when we get to it, the child is a video player with the stream or the input set to that video source that they set up here. That's a bit more complicated. Did everybody get that okay? There is a way to get user input. I'll do that next, actually. So before I do that, we're going to cover URL launcher right now. Can people send their favorite pumpkin pie recipes? Anything off the internet? So to make something clickable, I'm going to wrap my text in a flat button. This is, in my opinion, the default button for Flutter. If you want to just wrap something and make it clickable, you can just wrap it in a flat button very quickly. And I have to set the flat button. It is that yellow because it needs an on pressed. And Flutter function definitions, I haven't coded in Java for a little while, but I believe you're not allowed to do this in Java. You can define a function on the spot by just doing the parentheses and then the brackets, sort of like in JavaScript with the arrows. So now I have my function. And I'm going to add something here at the end. It's going to be with the brackets. And this is going to be string dessert URL. On pressed, I'm going to say if dessert URL, isn't equal to null, because if they didn't put it in, then it'll just be no. Then I want to launch let's see. Pumpkin pie recipe. This one looks good to me. Then I want to launch the dessert URL. Now I have to set the dessert URL up here. Now, this isn't going to work. Does anybody know why? X squares, I'll replace it. Does anybody know why this code won't work? This code is not going to work because in order to use the package, I have to first import it. So if I import the package at the top, I forgot a semicolon. That's enough. What this is. Looks like it's working. So now, if I click on pumpkin pie, it's going to launch that website. If I want to make it a bit more fancy, I can switch my flat button to a raised button. And now you can see there's a button around it. In honor of pumpkin pie, I can set the color of that button to colors. And it comes with a bunch of preset colors. Orange. All right, next thing. Next thing was going to be user input. So let's cover text fields. So in here, below these, I'm going to add a divider. And I'm first going to just create a simple text field. This is just going to be a material design text field, as everything by default is in Flutter. And I click on it, it turns blue. I can type whatever I want. To get input out of it, there are a few ways. For start, I'm going to cover the onChanged. This is an onChanged function. This is one of the parts of the object that it comes with. So every time the function is changed, it gives us a value. I believe, sorry, my ID seems not to be working. Yeah, value. And if we want to see it, I can just print that value. So now, when I write here, you can see in my command line that it's logging every change. And I can also just switch this to be an onSubmitted. So now it won't do it always. I have to reload it, sorry. I have to reload, but then when I do an onSubmitted, it's not logging until I click enter. I delete these, I click enter, and now it's logging. To take this a bit further, I'm going to introduce you to something called a key, or a global key. And global keys can be used to make interaction from a global level. So for starting, I'm going to define a global key. And this one's going to be for my scaffold, so I call it global key bracket scaffold state. global key, and I'm just going to set it equal to a global key. So now, for this global key to do anything, it has to be attached to a global object. And I'm going to put the global key in here. Then, when it's changed, I'm going to do global key. And in its current state, I want to show a snack bar. This is another widget. I can show a snack bar by creating a snack bar and setting its, I believe, title or message or content, that's it, text to whatever you just put in there. Snack bars are one of my favorite things that Flutter has. They're just very clean, and they can make a very simple app look really good really quickly. So now when I type in, hi, everybody, if I press enter, a snack bar pops up with hi, everybody. And it's because this scaffold state is now telling it to show a snack bar. Did that make sense? And these two are also super stylable. They have colors that you can put on them just by setting its color to background color to something else. You can actually set one of the things that it took me months of Flutter to even realize this existed was its behavior. And you can set its snack bar behavior to floating. And what this does is it just gives it a more iOS feel if you're interested in that. Now, rather than coming up from the bottom, it sort of pops up like that. And if I wanted to go back, I can just go to the normal fixed one. For those of you guys who are looking at what the heck is a snack bar behavior, it's just an enum. It's just a list of items that you can choose through. Going through a bit more, I think I want to customize my text field. So the next thing I can do here is add a decoration, which is going to be a new class of input decoration. If I wanted to add hints, that's where I would add it. And one of the things that I think I've seen my web developer friends are very jealous that I can do this easily is the label text, or it may be known as a helper now. But now, that effect, the up to down, I've found very useful to get a really good UI really quickly. Julie, did that answer your question? Review the purpose of a global key. So global keys can be used, in my experience, I mostly use them to open things from a global position. I haven't had to use them for anything else. But a global key is defined as a key from the outside. You can attach it to a global object. This also would work in iOS-styled stuff too. And the global key is first attached to a scaffold. And then when you want to call something from that scaffold, when you want to make that scaffold do something, you go into the current state of the scaffold. And you can show a snack bar, or you can show a bottom sheet, or you can hide this stuff too. You can hide them. And you can see even if they're open. Actually, thank you for that question, Josh, because you reminded me of another feature that Flutter makes super easy. Looks like we're coming up on an hour, so we're going to see how this goes. But another thing that Scaffold comes with, which is very material design, is a drawer. And you can set, a drawer is just a side menu. You can set a drawer by literally setting the drawer as a drawer from the scaffold. And I want to make my drawer's child a text that says, open me. Because when you look right now, you're not actually going to see a jar. So now what I can do is I can have it, rather than opening a snack bar when it's completed, I can get the global key, which is connected to the scaffold, so it's really looking at the scaffold state. I can call its current state. I can have it open the drawer. And what this is going to do now is it's going to be, I can type in O, and I press enter, and it opens the drawer. So global keys are used to access the state of big items from within them. And again, they're not very useful when you're getting started. They can become more useful when you want to start passing state from a widget to a widget within a widget, and so on and so forth. Does anybody have a position on if we should do more functions? I can show you guys how to show dialogues. I can show if we want to do more user interface and tuning like that. I can show scrolling stuff. Anything else? I think images are going to be interesting. So to start, I need a URL. So I'm just going to copy this image address. And if I want to show an image from the internet, I'll do this right below my Pumpkin Pyro. I can do, firstly, I'd normally just show it as an image. And that'd be if I have an image that I stored locally or something like that. But there's a trick in Flutter for that, where you can go image.network. And this is how I've done a lot of net images. It's just you do image.network, and that's it. I forgot to add a comma after. Sorry about that. And now it's quiet while it's loading, and then it shows you your image. And it even auto caches it for you, so you don't have to worry about that. Did that make sense? I know it was pretty quick. Again, we just added the image.network widget. And then we set its main thing, which you can see it passes it as the SRC. And it just loaded it. So again, if you're stuck, please let me know. If you're looking to do it on your own, everything that's shown here is going to be shown in this tutorial. And if you're interested in anything, let me know so we can do it. I think we've got, if you guys are, I know I'm excited to do hacking. If you guys want to keep going, we can do that. And if you guys want to do the other stuff, anything else covering that, I can go over Flutter or its alternatives. Let me know. I'm here for questions. Thank you, guys.